AITA for saying thank you and leaving at 5 after my boss told me I wasn't ready for a promotion. 2 days later, I had 23 missed calls. The rain pounded hard against the windshield as I sat in that parking garage, staring at my phone screen showing 23 missed calls. Just 2 days earlier, Thomas Caldwell had looked me straight in the eye and told me I was not ready for the promotion. Now everyone at Pinnacle Systems was calling me as if the building were on fire. My name is Daniel Harper. I am 49 years old, and until that conversation with my boss, I thought I knew exactly where my career was headed. It turns out I was wrong about a lot of things. I have been with Pinnacle Systems for 8 years. Before that, I spent 12 years in the Navy running logistics operations. When you are responsible for getting supplies to ships halfway around the world, you learn quickly that the details matter. Every system, every process, every backup plan, it all has to work flawlessly or people get hurt. That mentality served me well in corporate America, maybe too well. When I started at Pinnacle, the operations department was a complete mess. My predecessor had left with no documentation, no transition notes, nothing. It was like walking into a house where someone had cut all the electrical wires and removed all the labels. I spent the first 6 months rebuilding everything from scratch, working until midnight most nights, coming in on weekends, mapping every process, and creating detailed guides for everything. My son Ethan was only 7 then. This was about 5 years after my wife Grace had passed away from cancer. I remember him asking why Dad was always at work, but I figured it would pay off eventually. That is what they tell you, right? Work hard, keep your head down, and you will be recognized. For 8 years, I was the guy who made sure everything ran smoothly. When our biggest client, Granite Industries, had urgent requests, I was the one who stayed late to handle them. When systems failed, I fixed them. When processes broke, I rebuilt them. I created training materials, documented every workflow, and basically became the institutional memory for the entire operations department. Thomas Caldwell became my boss about 3 years ago. He was a good guy, about 45, and very focused on the big picture stuff. The problem was, he never bothered to learn any of the actual systems. Why would he? I had everything running so smoothly that he could focus on strategic planning and executive meetings. What I did not know was that Thomas had other plans for the department. His son Cameron had just graduated with an MBA from Northwestern. He was a smart, 26-year-old kid, but he had never worked a day in operations, never managed a crisis at 2 in the morning. He had never had to explain to an angry client why their shipment was delayed. He had never had to rebuild a system from the ground up. The promotion meeting happened on a Tuesday. I had prepared a full presentation showing how I had improved efficiency by 35% in the last 2 years, reduced errors by 60%, and personally managed the relationship with Granite Industries, which brought in $8 million annually. Thomas glanced at my portfolio for maybe 5 minutes before setting it aside. "I appreciate everything you have done, Daniel," he said, not really looking at me. "But I have been thinking about the direction of this department. We need fresh perspectives, new energy. Cameron will be joining us next month as the Senior Operations Manager. Senior Operations Manager, you will continue in your current role. Cameron will need someone experienced to help him get up to speed. Someone experienced to help him get up to speed." Translation: I would be doing all the work while his son got the title and the pay raise. I kept my expression neutral, just like they taught us in the Navy. "I understand. Thank you for the feedback." "Great. Glad we are on the same page. Cameron starts on Monday, so maybe you could put together some orientation materials over the weekend." That is when something clicked in me. I had been working weekends for 8 years. I had missed Ethan's baseball games, school plays, and parent-teacher conferences. I had given this company everything, and they wanted me to spend my weekend preparing to train my replacement. I stood up, shook Thomas's hand, and walked out of his office. But instead of going back to my desk, I walked straight to the parking garage. There, I made the decision that changed everything. I was not going to quit in a huff. I was not going to storm out or make a scene. I was going to do something much more effective. I was going to follow my job description exactly as it was written. You see, what Thomas and the executives did not understand was that my official job description was pretty basic: manage daily operations within the assigned scope, coordinate with other departments as needed, maintain client relationships within operational parameters. It was standard corporate language that did not come close to describing what I actually did every day. What I actually did was get in at 7 in the morning to prepare briefing notes for Thomas's 9 o'clock meetings. I answered emails for 3 different departments because I had somehow become the go-to guy for any operational question. I solved problems before they became crises, staying late to make sure nothing blew up overnight. But my job description said 9 to 5, so that is what I was going to do. I drove home that Tuesday afternoon and did something I had not done in years. I turned off my work phone at 5:30. Ethan was shocked when I walked through the door at 6 o'clock instead of 8 or 9. "Dad, why are you home so early?" "I decided my time is more valuable than I thought," I told him. "Want to toss a baseball around before dinner?" His face lit up like it was Christmas morning. Wednesday morning, I arrived at exactly 9 o'clock. No briefing notes for Thomas. No getting a head start on the day's crises. I answered emails addressed directly to me and forwarded everything else to the appropriate departments. When my phone rang with questions about processes that were not technically my responsibility, I politely directed the callers to the relevant department head. By lunchtime, people were starting to notice. Monica from accounting came by my desk with a confused look. "Daniel, did you see the email about the scheduling conflict on the Granite Industries shipment?" "I did," I replied, continuing with my assigned quarterly report. "And you're going to fix it like you always do?" "That is actually a logistics coordination issue. I forwarded it to shipping and procurement. They will have to work it out together." Her eyebrows shot up. "But you always handle these cross-departmental things." "I have been advised to focus more on my core responsibilities," I said with a smile. "Just trying to be more efficient with my time." The look of confusion on Monica's face told me everything I needed to know. No one had ever bothered to understand what my actual job was versus what I had been doing all these years. By Thursday, the cracks were starting to show. The Granite Industries problem had escalated because shipping and procurement could not figure out the solution I normally handled in 10 minutes. 3 other clients had routine requests that were stalled in various departments because no one knew the proper escalation procedures. I watched it all unfold with the detached interest of someone observing a science experiment. Every unanswered email, every call transferred 3 times, every urgent request that nobody could handle. It was all documented in my comprehensive operations manual that apparently no one had bothered to read. Adrian from procurement came by my desk around 2 o'clock, looking haggard. "Daniel, the Morrison Industries purchase order is stuck in approval hell. Can you work your magic?" "What seems to be the issue?" I asked, genuinely curious. "The system will not accept their new billing address, and no one knows how to override it." I nodded thoughtfully. "That process is covered in Section 7 of the Operations Manual. The override requires supervisor approval from both procurement and accounting. But that will take hours of calls and back-and-forth emails. It is a security feature to prevent billing fraud. A pretty important protection for the company." Adrian just stared at me. "You have always just handled it in 5 minutes." I had special authorization from previous management to expedite certain processes, but with the department restructuring coming up, I figured it was best to stick to the standard protocols. He walked away shaking his head, probably wondering when I had become such a stickler for the rules. Thursday afternoon, I was home by 5:15. Ethan was doing homework at the kitchen table when I came in. "Dad, can you help me with this math problem?" For the first time in months, I actually had the mental energy to sit and focus on his algebra instead of thinking about work emergencies. We spent an hour working through problems together, and I realized how much I had missed these simple moments. "You know, Dad," Ethan said when we finished, "you seem different this week." "Different how?" "Less stressed, I guess. Like you are actually here when you are here." Smart kid. He had noticed something I was only just beginning to understand myself. Friday morning brought the real crisis. I arrived at 9 o'clock to find chaos in full swing. Thomas was pacing outside the conference room. Cameron was already there, looking overwhelmed, and Gerald Whitman, our regional director, had apparently been called in for an emergency meeting. The receptionist intercepted me before I could get to my desk. "Daniel, they need you in the conference room." Immediately, I grabbed my notebook and walked into what was clearly an all-hands-on-deck crisis situation. In addition to Thomas, Cameron, and Gerald, there were 2 people I did not recognize, likely executives from corporate headquarters. "Daniel," Gerald said with evident relief. "Thank God you are here. We have got a serious situation with Granite Industries." "What is the specific issue?" Thomas started to explain, but it was clear he only understood half the problem. Granite had called an emergency meeting for 10 o'clock because their implementation was failing. Cameron was taking notes frantically, but kept asking basic questions that showed he did not understand our systems. Their entire fourth quarter rollout is at risk, one of the corporate executives said. They are threatening to pull the contract if we do not resolve this today. I reviewed the details of the problem they had gathered. It was a fairly straightforward issue if you understood the system dependencies and had access to the right documentation. This is a known issue with their custom configuration, I said. The resolution is documented in the implementation guide, section 12. It requires coordinating changes across 3 different systems in a specific sequence. Cameron was frantically flipping through his copy of the manual. Which section exactly? Section 12, subsection 4-7A. The process takes about 3 hours if you follow the step-by-step procedures. Gerald leaned forward. Can you handle this immediately? I checked my watch. I have the quarterly compliance review scheduled at 11 o'clock. That is due to federal regulators by the end of the day, so it cannot be rescheduled. The compliance review can wait, Thomas said quickly. Granite is more critical. I understand Granite is important, I replied. However, missing the regulatory deadline results in automatic financial penalties and a possible license suspension. That would impact all of our clients, not just Granite. The room went silent. You could practically hear everyone calculating the implications. What are our options? Gerald asked carefully. Well, Cameron could handle the Granite issue using the documented procedures. It would be excellent training for him, and I would be available for questions between sessions of the compliance review. Cameron looked like a deer in the headlights. I don't think I am ready for something this critical. The documentation is very detailed, I said encouragingly. It is all laid out step by step. This is exactly the kind of hands-on experience you will need in your new role. Thomas's face was turning red. Daniel, we need you to fix this personally. I am happy to take the lead on Granite, I said. If you want me to reschedule the compliance review, I just want to be clear about the regulatory implications. Gerald held up a hand. Let us think this through. What would it take to handle both? I considered the timeline. The compliance review is scheduled in 2-hour blocks. I could handle the most critical Granite fixes between sessions, but the full resolution would not be finished until after 5 o'clock. That is cutting it close with Granite's deadline, the corporate executive noted. It is, I agreed. In the past, I would have stayed until midnight to handle both, but I have been reflecting on work-life balance lately. My son has a baseball game tonight that I have already missed twice this month. The silence was deafening. Gerald finally broke it. Daniel, let me be direct. What would it take for you to handle this crisis the way you always have? I looked around the room at the faces staring at me. These people had depended on my expertise for 8 years without ever acknowledging what I truly contributed. Now, suddenly, my work-life balance was their emergency. Well, I said slowly, I suppose we should discuss what my role here really is. Your role is to solve operational problems, Thomas snapped. According to my job description, my role is to manage daily operations within the assigned scope. The Granite implementation falls under project management, which reports to a different department. The corporate executive leaned forward. Are you saying you will not help? Not at all. I am saying that if we want to solve this properly, we need to clarify responsibilities and authority. Cameron is starting as Senior Operations Manager on Monday. This seems like an excellent opportunity for him to learn the systems. Cameron spoke up, his voice shaky. Daniel, I appreciate your confidence, but I am not ready for something this high stakes. I looked at him with genuine kindness. Cameron, you have an MBA from Northwestern. You are smart and capable. The only difference between you and me is that I have seen these problems before, but every expert was once a beginner. But what if I mess it up? Then we will fix it. That is how you learn. The documentation is comprehensive, and I will be available for guidance. Thomas was getting impatient. We do not have time for training exercises. Actually, we do, I said. The Granite problem is not going anywhere in the next few hours. It has been building for weeks because no one wanted to follow the proper implementation procedures. A few more hours will not change anything. Gerald studied me carefully. Daniel, it seems something has changed in your approach this week. You are right. I have been thinking about my career path and what I want my legacy to be. And what conclusion did you come to? That I have been enabling a system that does not work. By constantly stepping in to solve problems outside my official role, I have prevented the company from building proper processes and developing the capabilities of other people. The room was silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. Let me ask you something, I continued. What happens when I retire, get hit by a bus, or decide to take that job offer from Baxter Industries? The corporate executive's eyes sharpened. What job offer? A competitor reached out last month. Director of Operations, a 35% pay increase, full remote flexibility. I have not responded yet because I have been loyal to Pinnacle. I was not lying. Baxter had reached out, though I had not seriously considered it until this week. Gerald and the corporate executive exchanged glances. Thomas looked like he was going to be sick. Perhaps we should discuss this privately, Gerald said. Cameron, why don't you start reviewing the Granite documentation with Daniel's guidance? Everyone else, let us go to my office. As Cameron and I walked to my desk, he seemed overwhelmed. Daniel, I want you to know, I never asked my dad to give me this promotion. I know you deserved it. I stopped and looked at him. Cameron, you seem like a good kid, but here is the thing. This is not about what you asked for or what you deserve. It is about what is best for the company and what is best for you. What do you mean? If your father had promoted you over me without proper preparation, you would have failed. Not because you are incompetent, but because you are not ready. That failure would have damaged your confidence and your reputation for years. Cameron nodded slowly. I had not thought of it that way. Leadership is not about getting the title first and figuring it out later. It is about developing the competence to handle the responsibility. If you are serious about operations management, you need to learn these systems inside and out. We spent the next hour going over the Granite documentation. Cameron was quite sharp. He asked good questions and picked up on concepts quickly. With proper mentorship, he could become a solid operations manager in a couple of years. Around noon, Gerald returned to my desk. Daniel, could I speak with you privately? We walked to his office, where the corporate executive was waiting. I noticed Thomas was not there. Please sit down, Gerald said. I want to be completely transparent with you. We have made some serious mistakes in how we have managed this department. Specific mistakes? The corporate executive spoke up. We have created an unsustainable dependency on your expertise without proper recognition or compensation, and we have allowed personal relationships to influence professional decisions. I waited for them to continue. We would like to offer you the position of Director of Operations, reporting directly to me, Gerald said. A 35% salary increase, authority to restructure the department as you see fit, and full hiring authority for 2 additional senior positions. It was a good offer, not as dramatic as the 75% raise I had fantasized about, but realistic and fair. What about Cameron? I asked. Cameron will start as an operations associate and will advance under your guidance. If he demonstrates competence, he can move up on merit. And Thomas? Gerald shifted uncomfortably. Thomas will be moving to a strategic planning role. The operational departments will report through your office. So Thomas was being moved sideways. It was not exactly revenge, but it was accountability. I will need to consider this, I said. Of course, but Daniel, I need an answer by Monday morning, and I would appreciate it if you could help stabilize the Granite situation today regardless of your decision. I nodded. I will handle Granite. Cameron can assist and take detailed notes. As I walked back to my desk, I thought about what had just happened. They were offering me everything I had wanted: recognition, authority, and proper compensation. But more importantly, they were finally acknowledging the value I had been providing all along. The question was, did I want to stay and fix this system or start fresh somewhere else? That afternoon, Cameron and I worked on the Granite Industries crisis together. I walked him through the resolution process step by step, explaining not just what to do, but why each step mattered. He took detailed notes and asked intelligent questions that showed he was genuinely trying to understand the underlying systems. This is incredibly complex, Cameron said as we finished the technical fixes. How did you learn all of this? 8 years of trial and error, I told him, plus a lot of late nights reading system manuals no one else wanted to touch. I had no idea how much went into this job. My dad made it sound like basic project coordination. I looked at him carefully. Cameron seemed genuinely humbled by the experience. Your dad is not wrong that it involves coordination, but operations is about understanding how all the pieces fit together and what happens when they do not. We finished the Granite fixes by 4:30. Their system was running smoothly again, and Cameron had a full set of notes for handling similar issues in the future. As I packed up to leave at 5 o'clock, my phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. "Dad, game starts at 6:30. You really gonna be there?" I stared at that text for a long moment. For 8 years, the honest answer would have been probably not. Tonight, the answer was different. "Would not miss it," I replied. Ethan's baseball game was everything I had been missing. He pitched 4 strong innings, and I got to see him strike out the cleanup hitter with a curveball I had taught him last weekend. After the game, we went for ice cream and talked about school, his friends, and his plans for the summer. "Dad," he said as we sat outside the ice cream shop, "are you going to keep coming to my games?" "That is the plan, buddy. I have been working too much, and I do not want to miss any more of your seasons." "Good," he said, smiling, because Tommy's dad never misses his games, and I was getting kind of jealous. That hit me harder than I expected. My 12-year-old son had been watching other fathers show up while his dad was stuck in meetings about quarterly reports. Over the weekend, I thought a lot about Gerald's offer. The director position was everything I had worked for: recognition, authority, and the ability to build systems that helped other people advance instead of getting stuck like I had. But there was also something appealing about the fresh start that Baxter Industries represented, with no history of being overlooked and no colleagues who still saw me as the behind-the-scenes problem solver instead of leadership material. On Sunday afternoon, I made my decision. Monday morning, I arrived at 8:30, a compromise between my old 7 a.m. routine and the strict 9 o'clock I had been keeping. I went straight to Gerald's office. "I will accept your offer," I told him, "but with 2 conditions." Gerald nodded. "Go ahead. First, I want full authority to hire and develop talent within the company. Too many good people get overlooked because they are not in the right positions to show their skills." Agreed. Second, I want to implement a comprehensive cross-training program. What happened this week should never happen again. No critical knowledge should exist only in one person's head. Also agreed. Anything else? Just one thing. I want Cameron to succeed in this field if it is what he truly wants, but he needs to earn it through competence, not connections. Gerald smiled. "I think you will find that Cameron is more committed to learning than any of us expected." The transition took about 6 weeks. I restructured the department around clear roles and responsibilities instead of the informal system of whoever handles it best. I hired 2 excellent senior members who brought fresh perspectives while I provided the institutional knowledge they needed to be effective. Cameron turned out to be a dedicated learner. He worked harder than anyone expected, staying late not because he had to, but because he wanted to master the systems. Within 3 months, he was handling routine client issues independently and showing real leadership potential. The most surprising development was with Thomas. Once he was not trying to manage operations he did not understand, he truly excelled at strategic planning. His big-picture thinking, combined with the solid operational foundation we were building, helped the company land 2 major new contracts. 6 months later, I was working at a sustainable pace, home for dinner by 6:30 most nights, and present for every one of Ethan's remaining games that season. My team was functioning independently, clients were happy, and I felt like I was finally doing the job I had always been capable of. One evening, as Ethan and I were working on homework together, he asked me about work. "So, you are like really important now?" "I was always important, Ethan. It just took them a while to notice." "Is that why you worked so much before? To prove you were important?" "Smart kid." "Yeah, I think so. But I learned something. The people who matter will see your value without you having to work yourself to death proving it. And the ones who do not see it? Well, sometimes you have to step back and let them figure out what they are missing." As I watched my son work through his math problems with the same methodical focus I had tried to teach him, I realized that the best answer to being undervalued is not anger or revenge. It is demonstrating your worth so clearly that it becomes impossible to ignore. The promotion to director came with respect, authority, and the ability to build something better. But the real victory was simpler than that. I was finally being seen for what I had always been able to do, and I was home for dinner every night to help my son with his homework. Comment. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is quietly recognize your own worth. Setting boundaries is not about pushing people away. It is about defining the space you need to be healthy. You can be firm in your principles while still being kind to the people caught in the middle. True change often begins when we take responsibility and stop enabling systems that no longer serve us. This act of stepping back can create room for us to heal and reconnect with what truly matters. The goal is not always to win a fight, but to find sustainable peace for yourself. Sometimes the best promotion is the one that allows you to be fully present with your family. When you honor your own value, you give others the opportunity to see it as well. I hope you find the courage to build a life that respects both your contributions and your well-being. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.